The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped through Jennifer Martinez's mail slot like a poisoned dart. Jennifer, 42, a former JAG Corps attorney turned urban farmer, stood in her kitchen reading the HOA violation notice for the third time, her hands trembling not from fear but from pure, crystallized rage. Immediate removal of unauthorized livestock required within 72 hours or face $500 daily fines. She glanced through her window at Henrietta, Clementine, and Pearl, 3 heritage breed chickens peacefully scratching through her garden beds, providing fresh eggs and therapeutic companionship since her PTSD diagnosis 2 years ago. 6 months of this? 6 months of Linda Ashworth, the HOA president, weaponizing bylaws written in 1987, ignoring Jennifer's medical documentation, dismissing her rights with a smile that never reached her eyes. But today was different. Today, Jennifer wasn't just a veteran being bullied off her own property. She was an attorney who'd spent the last month researching every loophole, every ordinance, every protection that Linda didn't know existed. And what Linda Ashworth didn't know was about to destroy her. Before we dive into how Jennifer dismantled an HOA president's entire power structure with 3 chickens and a law degree, if you love stories where entitled people finally meet someone who knows exactly how to fight back, hit that like button and subscribe. Now let's see how a decorated veteran taught a Karen that some battles you just can't win. This is a story in 3 parts. The harassment that pushed a disabled veteran to her breaking point, the confrontation where legal expertise met entitled ignorance, and the resolution where justice arrived with feathers attached. The first part takes you inside 6 months of psychological warfare. Jennifer had moved to Riverside Meadows HOA seeking peace after 12 years of military service left her with wounds you couldn't see. Her chickens weren't pets. They were therapy, prescribed and documented. But Linda Ashworth saw only violations, only power to wield, only a soft target who surely wouldn't fight back. Each violation notice cut deeper. Each dismissive board meeting compounded the trauma. The weight of fighting your own neighbors while fighting your own mind creates a special kind of hell. But Jennifer had been trained for battle, and Linda had just declared war on the wrong soldier. The second part reveals the moment Jennifer stopped defending and started attacking. The emergency HOA meeting Linda called to address the livestock situation became Linda's public execution. Because Jennifer hadn't spent a month researching, she'd spent a month building an ironclad legal fortress. And when she walked into that community center conference room with her service animal certifications, her ADA documentation, and her evidence of HOA harassment, Linda's confident smirk began to crack. The power dynamic didn't just shift, it evaporated. The third part delivers justice so satisfying it's almost poetic. Jennifer didn't just win, she restructured the entire HOA, exposed years of Linda's financial mismanagement, and turned 3 chickens into the most legally protected poultry in the state. The fallout was spectacular, the consequences were permanent, and the lesson was crystal clear. Never pick a legal fight with someone who used to prosecute war crimes for a living. Jennifer Martinez bought the house on Maple Grove Drive because it had a garden. Not just any garden, a 1/4 acre of southern-facing soil with raised beds already built, a greenhouse frame waiting for panels, and enough space to finally create the sanctuary her therapist kept insisting she needed. After 12 years as a judge advocate general attorney in the Army, including 2 deployments prosecuting detainee abuse cases, Jennifer's mind had become a battlefield of its own. The PTSD diagnosis came with medication that made her foggy, therapy sessions that dredged up memories she'd buried, and a doctor's recommendation that changed everything. Animal-assisted therapy. Not dogs, which reminded her too much of military working dogs and the handler she'd lost in Kandahar. Chickens. Gentle, predictable, grounding chickens that required routine care and gave back eggs and purpose and something living that depended on her. She bought Henrietta, Clementine, and Pearl from a heritage breed farm in March. By April, she'd built them a coop that looked like a tiny Victorian cottage, painted sage green to match her house. By May, she was sleeping through the night for the first time in 2 years. Her therapist documented the improvement. Her psychiatrist reduced her medication. The chickens scratched and clucked through her garden beds, controlling pests, fertilizing soil, and providing the gentle routine that kept Jennifer's hands busy and her mind present. She posted about them on the neighborhood social media group, shared eggs with her immediate neighbors, followed every city ordinance regarding urban chickens. Everything was legal. Everything was documented. Everything was perfect, until Linda Ashworth noticed. The first violation notice appeared in June, tucked into Jennifer's doorframe on a Saturday morning. Section 7.3 of HOA bylaws prohibits livestock, farm animals, or poultry within residential properties. Remove immediately or face fines. Jennifer read it twice, then pulled out her closing documents. The HOA bylaws she'd received mentioned nothing about chickens. She emailed Linda directly, politely explaining that the city allowed up to 6 chickens, her birds met all setback requirements, and they were part of her medical treatment plan. She attached her therapist's letter and her PTSD documentation. Linda's response came within an hour. HOA rules supersede city ordinances. Medical conditions don't exempt you from community standards. Remove the animals by July 1st. Jennifer attended the July HOA meeting with a binder of documentation, city ordinances, her medical records, photos of her immaculate coop, letters from 3 neighbors supporting her chickens. She waited through 40 minutes of Linda holding court over someone's mailbox color and another resident's landscaping rocks before her name was called. Jennifer stood, opened her binder, and began explaining her situation. Linda cut her off after 30 seconds. "Mrs. Martinez, we're not running a farm here. This is a residential community with standards. Your medical situation, while unfortunate, doesn't entitle you to violate our bylaws." Jennifer felt the room's eyes on her, felt the familiar tightness in her chest that signaled a panic attack forming. "The city code specifically allows—" Linda interrupted again. "City code is irrelevant. You signed our bylaws when you purchased your home. The chickens go, or the fines start." The board voted unanimously without discussion. Jennifer left shaking, tears burning behind her eyes, her service dog training manuals already pulled up on her phone. The second violation notice arrived with a $250 fine in August. Jennifer had spent July researching, calling animal behaviorists, scheduling appointments with her medical team. The chickens stayed. The fine went unpaid. Linda sent a certified letter threatening legal action. Jennifer's immediate neighbor, Tom Chen, stopped by to apologize. "I voted for you at the meeting," he said quietly. "Linda runs that board like a dictatorship. She's been fining people into submission for years. Most just give up." Jennifer didn't ask what he meant. She was busy documenting everything now, every interaction, every timeline, every moment. Linda Ashworth underestimated exactly who she was dealing with. September brought the nuclear option. A $500 fine, and a notice that the HOA would seek a court order for chicken removal. Jennifer stood in her garden at sunset, watching Henrietta settle onto her roosting bar, feeling the weight of fighting another battle she never asked for. But something had shifted during her last therapy session. Her doctor had asked a simple question. When did you stop being the person who won fights? Jennifer had prosecuted war criminals. She'd faced down-decorated officers who'd violated the Geneva Conventions. She'd built cases that sent people to military prison, and now she was letting a suburban HOA president with a power complex make her feel helpless. If Linda wanted to play legal games, Jennifer would. She spent the next 3 weeks buried in research. Not just service animal law, everything. HOA regulations, Fair Housing Act protections, state HOA statutes Linda clearly hadn't read, municipal code enforcement procedures. She contacted the Disability Rights Legal Center. She had her psychiatrist draft new documentation specifically citing animal-assisted therapy requirements. She found an animal behaviorist who specialized in service animal certifications. And on September 28th, Jennifer filed paperwork that would make Linda Ashworth's life very, very complicated. Because Henrietta, Clementine, and Pearl were no longer just chickens. They were registered emotional support animals under federal disability protection laws. And Linda had just spent 6 months creating a documented pattern of disability discrimination. The trap was set. Jennifer just had to wait for Linda to walk into it. Linda called an emergency HOA board meeting for October 3rd. The email Jennifer received made Linda's intentions crystal clear. Final resolution of livestock violation and initiation of legal proceedings. Linda had no idea she'd just scheduled her own professional humiliation. Jennifer arrived at the Riverside Meadows Community Center at 6:58 p.m., carrying a leather document bag that had once held court-martial prosecution files. She wore her navy blue blazer, the one she'd worn in courtrooms from Fort Bragg to Baghdad. Her hair was pulled back. Her expression was calm. Linda sat at the head table with 4 board members, looking like a queen about to pass judgment. Jennifer took a seat in the front row. Waited. Linda spent the first 20 minutes on routine business, clearly saving Jennifer for the main event. Finally, Linda cleared her throat and smiled that terrible smile. Now we address the ongoing livestock violation at 847 Maple Grove Drive. Mrs. Martinez, you've had months to comply with our reasonable request. Instead, you've ignored our notices, refused to pay fines, and shown complete disregard for community standards. Tonight, this board will vote to pursue legal action for immediate removal of your illegal farm animals and collection of $2,650 in accumulated fines. Would you like to say anything before we vote? Jennifer stood, placed her document bag on the table. Yes, Linda, I have quite a bit to say. She pulled out the first document. This is my certification from Dr. Sarah Okoye, licensed psychiatrist, documenting my PTSD diagnosis and prescribing animal-assisted therapy as primary treatment. The animals in question, Henrietta, Clementine, and Pearl, are specifically named. She placed it in front of Linda. This second document is my emotional support animal registration through the National Service Animal Registry. Dated September 28th. All 3 chickens are now registered ESAs under my disability accommodation plan. Linda barely glanced at the papers. Emotional support animals need to be dogs or cats. You can't just register chickens to avoid HOA rules? Jennifer smiled. It was the smile that used to terrify defendants. Actually, Linda, there's no legal restriction on species for emotional support. Animals under the Fair Housing Act. But I appreciate you documenting your lack of knowledge about disability law. She pulled out another document. This is a letter from the Department of Housing and Urban Development outlining HOA obligations regarding emotional support animals. Would you like me to read the relevant sections, or would you prefer to continue demonstrating your ignorance? The room had gone completely silent. Linda's face was reddening. You can't ambush this board with paperwork and expect... Jennifer cut her off, the prosecutor voice emerging. I'm not ambushing anyone. I'm responding to your threat of legal action with the legal protections you've been violating for 6 months. Shall we discuss those violations? She pulled out a thick folder. Here's my timeline. June 14th. First violation notice. I responded with medical documentation. You ignored it. July 2nd, board meeting. I presented evidence. You dismissed it without consideration. July 15th. Second violation notice with fine. August 3rd. Threat of legal action. September 1st, increased fines. Not once did you or this board engage in the interactive process required under the Fair Housing Act. Not once did you consider reasonable accommodation for a disabled veteran. Instead, you escalated. Linda stood up. I don't care what paperwork you've manufactured. Those chickens are going, and if you don't comply, we'll sue you for every dollar you owe plus attorney fees. Jennifer nodded slowly. Okay, let's talk about attorneys. She pulled out another document. This is my JAG Corps service record. 12 years as a military attorney, specialized in prosecuting code violations and regulatory compliance. I was very, very good at my job, Linda. She placed it down. And this is my bar license. Still active. Arizona and federal courts. So when you threaten me with legal action, understand that I am the attorney. And I'm significantly better at this than whoever you're planning to hire. The board members were staring at Linda now. Jennifer wasn't finished. But let's discuss your legal exposure, shall we? Because while you've been harassing a disabled veteran, I've been researching you. She opened a new folder. Linda's expression shifted from angry to nervous. Linda Ashworth, HOA president for 6 years. And in those 6 years, some interesting patterns emerged. You've initiated 47 violation proceedings, 43 of them against homeowners who voted against you in board elections or challenged your decisions. That's called selective enforcement, Linda. It's illegal. Jennifer pulled out printed emails. Here's you discussing problem residents on the board's private email chain. Quote, we need to fine them into submission or force them to sell. That's harassment. Here's you approving your own landscaping company for HOA common area maintenance, a company owned by your husband, without competitive bidding. That's self-dealing. Here's you increasing annual dues by 23% over 3 years while board meeting minutes show minimal discussion and rushed votes. That's potential financial mismanagement. She spread the documents across the table. Should I continue? Linda's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Jennifer leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to immediately rescind all fines against me. You're going to issue a written approval of my emotional support animals. And you're going to schedule a special meeting where the homeowners, not just your hand-picked board, review the last 6 years of HOA financial records and governance decisions. Because if you don't, I'm filing a formal complaint with the Arizona Attorney General's Office for HOA violations, a disability discrimination complaint with HUD, and a civil lawsuit for harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. And Linda? Jennifer's voice dropped. I don't lose cases. The 4 board members were looking at Linda like she'd grown a second head. One of them, an older man named Robert, cleared his throat. Linda, maybe we should table this discussion and consult our attorney. Linda's hands were shaking. This is blackmail. Jennifer shook her head. No. Blackmail would be threatening to expose your violations unless you pay me. I'm simply informing you of the legal consequences of your actions. That's called advocacy, and I'm very good at it. Jennifer packed her documents back into her bag. You have until 5 p.m. Friday to email me written approval of my accommodation request and rescission of all fines. If I don't receive it, I file everything Monday morning. Are we clear? Linda didn't answer. Jennifer looked at the other board members. For those of you who've been enabling this behavior, understand that board members can be held personally liable for civil rights violations. If you're smart, you'll distance yourselves from this situation immediately. Good night. She walked out of the community center into the October evening, her hands steady, her breathing calm. Behind her, she could hear raised voices starting. Linda Ashworth had spent 6 months trying to bully a disabled veteran. She'd never thought to ask what that veteran had done for a living. That mistake was about to cost her. The email arrived Thursday at 3:47 p.m. Jennifer was in her garden watching Clementine investigate a patch of oregano when her phone chimed. Re-accommodation approval. She opened it. Linda's tone was clipped, furious but compliant. The board approves your request for emotional support animals as a reasonable accommodation. All previous fines are rescinded. Attached documentation confirms approval. Jennifer forwarded it to her attorney friend from her JAG days just to have it reviewed. The response came back within an hour. This is legal gold. She admitted everything. Frame it. But Jennifer wasn't done. Friday morning, she filed a formal request under Arizona HOA statutes for a special homeowners meeting to review board governance. She needed 25% of homeowners to sign the petition. She had it within 3 days. Turns out Linda had spent years making enemies, and those enemies were thrilled someone had finally called her out. Tom Chen went door to door with the petition. By Monday, they had 62% of homeowners signed on. The special meeting was scheduled for November 1st. Linda tried to control the narrative, sending emails about disgruntled residents, spreading misinformation. Jennifer responded with a detailed breakdown of every governance violation she'd uncovered, CCing every homeowner. She included screenshots of Linda's selective enforcement, documentation of her husband's no-bid contracts, and a financial analysis showing HOA dues had increased 23%, while common area maintenance had actually decreased. Several homeowners who'd been fined into silence started coming forward with their own stories. A retired teacher who'd been fined $800 for a fence color that Linda approved for her friend. A young family threatened with liens for playground equipment that violated no actual bylaws. A pattern of abuse so clear it was breathtaking. The November 1st meeting filled the community center beyond capacity. 180 homeowners showed up, some standing in the back. Linda sat at the head table looking cornered. Jennifer didn't attend. She'd submitted everything in writing and let the homeowners decide. But Tom Chen later described it as watching a dictatorship crumble in real time. The vote was unanimous. Linda was removed as president, effective immediately. The entire board was recalled. Temporary officers were elected, including Robert, the board member who'd suggested consulting an attorney. A forensic audit of HOA finances was approved, and the bylaws were amended to require transparent bidding processes, term limits for officers, recorded votes on all decisions, and a formal appeals process for violations. Linda stood up during the final vote, declared, "You'll all regret this," and walked out. She didn't return. The forensic audit completed in January revealed $34,000 in questionable payments to Linda's husband's landscaping company over 5 years. Some of the work was legitimate. Much of it was inflated or never performed. The HOA filed a civil suit for recovery. Linda and her husband settled for $22,000 plus legal fees rather than face court. They listed their house for sale in February, but the real resolution came on a Saturday morning in late January. Jennifer was in her garden, installing new raised beds for spring planting. Henrietta, Clementine, and Pearl scratched through the mulch, their movements peaceful and rhythmic. Tom Chen walked over with his wife and their 6-year-old daughter carrying a box with air holes. "We got chickens," the little girl announced proudly. "Mommy said you could help us build a coop." Over the next month, 4 more families in Riverside Meadows got chickens. The new HOA board approved Jennifer's proposal for urban agriculture guidelines. Reasonable, legal, well-researched guidelines that protected homeowners' rights while maintaining community standards. Jennifer drafted them personally pro bono. The community garden initiative that Linda had blocked for years was finally approved. Jennifer volunteered to manage it. 2 months after the confrontation, Jennifer attended a regular HOA meeting for the first time since her victory. The new president, Maria Lopez, a retired civil engineer, ran the meeting efficiently and transparently. When someone raised a concern about a neighbor's landscaping, Maria suggested a friendly conversation before any formal action. "We're a community," she said. "Not a courtroom." Jennifer smiled at that. After the meeting, Maria pulled Jennifer aside. "I wanted to thank you. Linda had been running this place like her personal fiefdom for years. People were afraid to challenge her. You showed us we didn't have to be." Jennifer shook her head. "You all showed yourselves. I just gave you the tools." Maria laughed. An attorney with PTSD and 3 chickens took down a HOA tyrant. If that's not the most American story I've ever heard, I don't know what is. Jennifer walked home through the quiet streets of Riverside Meadows, past houses where lights glowed warm against the February darkness. She'd moved here seeking peace and found a battle. But she'd also found something else, a community that, once awakened, refused to go back to sleep. The therapeutic routine of chicken care had saved her mental health. Fighting for those chickens had reminded her who she was. Not just a veteran struggling with trauma, but an advocate who knew how to win. She found Henrietta, Clementine, and Pearl already roosting when she reached her backyard. 3 warm bundles of feathers tucked into their Victorian cottage coop. She stood there in the darkness, feeling the weight she'd carried for months finally lifting. Linda Ashworth had seen a vulnerable target, a woman with PTSD who wouldn't fight back. She'd never considered that vulnerability and strength aren't opposites, that someone could be broken and still be dangerous, that the attorney who'd prosecuted war criminals hadn't forgotten how to build an unwinnable case. Jennifer had learned that sometimes justice doesn't come from avoiding conflict. Sometimes it comes from standing your ground with every legal weapon you possess and refusing to let entitled people mistake your kindness for weakness. And as she locked her coop for the night and headed inside to the house that was finally truly hers, she smiled. Because justice, whether served in a courtroom or a community center, was equally satisfying. Especially when it came with fresh eggs. Across the country in Savannah, Georgia, a Karen at a Whole Foods parking lot was screaming at Miguel Torres, a soft-spoken pediatric oncologist, because his piece of junk minivan was parked too close to her BMW. Miguel listened quietly to her 2-minute rant about people like him not knowing how to drive, then calmly pulled out his hospital ID and the photos he'd been taking of her license plate. "I'm the doctor treating your daughter Emily for leukemia," he said softly. "And you just racially profiled the man keeping her alive. Your husband might want to know about that." The color drained from her face. Miguel smiled, the same gentle smile he gave frightened children before good news, and said, "See you at her appointment Monday." But that's a story for another time.